Did you know that the most painful moment for a narcissist is not when someone leaves them, but when they are finally forced to face the truth that they destroyed the only real love they ever had in their life? Jung once said that the shadow hidden deep inside us is the very part we refuse to face, yet it is the one that secretly controls us the most. For the narcissist, that shadow is made of emptiness, the fear of being seen for who they really are, and the inability to love with real honesty. In this story, we will uncover the breaking point of a narcissist, the moment when the mask falls away, when their control no longer works, and when they finally understand that what they lost was not just another source of attention, but genuine love, a kind of love that will never come back to them. Through the ideas of Jungian psychology, we can see clearly that narcissists are not only victims of their own lies, but also the builders of their own downfall. They destroy the very thing that could have helped them become real human beings. So, what happens in their mind when this truth finally hits? How can silence and letting go be powerful enough to shatter the false world they built? And what lesson did Jung want us to learn so that we can heal, grow, and walk into freedom? Stay with this story till the end because you will not only understand how the narcissist ruins love, but also how you, as an empath, can turn your pain into strength and reclaim yourself. When the shadow rules, there is a quiet tragedy in the mind of a narcissist. They think they are the ones in control, but they are really caught in their own trap. Jung once said, "Whatever is not made conscious will return as fate." The control that narcissists think they have is not true power. It is only the reflection of their hidden fear, fear of being left, fear of being forgotten, fear of facing their own emptiness. On the outside, they appear confident, charming, and emotionally intelligent, pretending to be everything anyone could want. But this is not love, not kindness, not empathy. It is a calculated game where they believe that by manipulating others, they can secure superiority in the relationship. Jung would call this an illusion of the ego, a fragile construction made to hide the cracks within. They use familiar tools, flattery that feels too good to be true, sudden silence meant to create confusion, attention that appears deep but disappears at random. Each move is carefully designed to make the other person doubt themselves, to make them dependent on the narcissist's approval. The more confused the target becomes, the more the narcissist feels powerful. But what they think is victory is really the voice of a soul that never feels whole. Jung explained that the shadow is the part of ourselves we don't want to see, but it is also the part that runs our behavior the most. For the narcissist, this shadow is made of deep insecurity and loneliness. They build a mask of control so they never have to look into that emptiness. Yet the harder they try to control others, the more they reveal their own lack of control. And when real love arrives, it shines like light into the darkness, showing that the narcissist does not know how to connect with honesty, only how to play the same power games again and again. That moment is the beginning of their breaking point because no illusion can survive forever under the light of truth. From the very start, narcissists often enter relationships with irresistible charm. They know how to watch, how to listen, how to mirror your dreams and fears until it feels like they were made for you. They can say the words you always wanted to hear, act out gestures you secretly longed for, even share dreams that make you feel like you have found your soulmate. But as Jung taught, what we project onto others often comes from what we haven't faced within ourselves. The narcissist does not truly see you. They use you as a mirror to strengthen their own image. What looks like empathy is actually strategy. The reflection they create, what psychologists call mirroring, doesn't come from love. It comes from hunger, the hunger for control. When a narcissist makes you feel deeply understood, it isn't connection, it's infiltration. They reach into your most vulnerable places not to comfort you, but to learn how to influence you. This is where the love bombing begins. Overwhelming affection, endless praise, big promises of a perfect future. You feel lifted, special, almost divine in their eyes. But Jung noted that any experience that feels too perfect, too intense, carries the sign of the shadow, because real love doesn't need to dazzle. It is calm, steady, and real. Within that brightness, the narcissist's plan is already in motion. They quietly build an imbalance. They take the role of giver while you become the dependent receiver. They plant in you the belief that your happiness depends on them. When you get used to their constant attention, their sudden silence becomes a weapon. This is no longer love, it's emotional conditioning. Jung called such experiences projection traps. You think you found your twin soul, but you are only seeing your own longing reflected back at you through their mask. And every mask eventually cracks. Time always reveals the truth. The saddest part is that genuine love, the kind that could have healed both, becomes a tool of manipulation. But even within that deception, something begins to awaken. For when the light of true love touches the shadow, the one who trembles isn't the empath, it's the narcissist. After that dazzling beginning, once trust has been gained, the narcissist slowly changes the game. They no longer shower you with affection. Instead, they begin to create tiny wounds in your confidence. Jung once said, "The shadow does not disappear when denied, it only hides in unexpected places." For the narcissist, that shadow shows itself in emotional manipulation. Sweet words turn into backhanded compliments. You did well, but it's still not perfect. Sudden coldness replaces warmth, leaving you confused and wondering what you did wrong. These are not random actions. They are strategies, each designed to plant self-doubt and keep you chasing their approval. Jung called this ego erosion, the breaking down of a person's self-worth until they become dependent. When you start asking yourself, did I do something wrong? Am I not enough? You begin to give away your power without realizing it. Gaslighting becomes their main tool. It's more than lying. It's rewriting your memory, twisting your emotions, and making you doubt your own eyes. Once you stop trusting yourself, you become easy to control. And in that confusion, the narcissist positions themselves as your only guide, the one who decides what is real. But no matter how carefully they play the game, emotional control is never true connection. It can silence someone, yes, but it can never build love. Jung said, "There is no transformation without a crisis of the soul." And it's in that crisis that awakening begins. The person who has been controlled starts to see that love cannot survive under the shadow of fear and doubt. What the narcissist doesn't see is that each wound they cause becomes a lesson for the other person. Sooner or later, the one they tried to control realizes that their worth does not depend on anyone's approval. And when that moment arrives, the narcissist's power ends quietly, not with an argument, but with silence. In a healthy bond, love is mutual. Two people remain whole, supporting each other's growth. But in the narcissist's world, love turns into possession. They don't see their partner as a real person, but as an extension of their own ego, something to protect and control. Jung wrote, Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power dominates, love is absent. This confusion between love and power is what poisons the connection. For the narcissist, attachment isn't companionship, it's proof of dominance. They believe that if someone loves them, that person must always come second, must always sacrifice, must endure their sudden coldness and still stay loyal. Withdrawal of affection without reason becomes a normal pattern. In this twisted kind of thinking, love turns into a test of loyalty, and control is mistaken for closeness. Jung called it the possession of the shadow. When the false self uses every way possible to cover another person's spirit, the narcissist begins to envy anything that gives you happiness outside of them: a friend, a hobby, or even a peaceful moment alone. To them, every drop of emotional energy must return to feed the world of ego they have built around themselves. And when real love appears, the kind that is patient, honest, and without control, it feels like a threat. Because that kind of love asks for truth, awareness, and the strength to let go of power. But this is exactly what the narcissist cannot do. To love in a true way, they would have to drop the mask, give up control, and accept that they are also imperfect. To them, that feels like stepping into their own darkness, the very place they fear the most. So instead of opening their heart, they destroy the chance. They twist love into something cold, like a transaction. They want to be loved in submission, not in freedom. Yet here lies the painful truth. The tighter they hold on, the quicker love disappears. Love cannot live in a space where power rules. It only survives where there is respect, equality, and freedom of the soul. This is the point where the illusion of the narcissist begins to break. They think owning someone means connection, but in truth, possession kills love. Once the other person understands this, they no longer want to be owned by anyone. They choose freedom. And when they finally walk away, the narcissist loses the one thing that control can never bring back: real love. In genuine love, silence can be peaceful. It can be a pause, a moment to breathe, to listen, to heal, and to reconnect. But for a narcissist, silence becomes a weapon. They use it to confuse and to control. They know that being kind one day and cold the next keeps you uncertain. And inside that uncertainty, they plant fear. Carl Jung once said, "Where there is no awareness, fate will decide for us." When someone cannot understand why affection suddenly disappears, they begin to blame themselves, unknowingly letting the narcissist rewrite their reality. This silence is never by chance, it is carefully planned. The narcissist knows a kind word can lift you up, while sudden distance can throw you into sadness. This constant push and pull makes you doubt yourself and keeps you tied to their approval. Every glance, every message, every small return feels like a reward, but in truth, it's only little bits of affection given to keep control. Jung described this as the rule of the shadow, when the unhealed, hidden parts of a person begin to control their actions. The narcissist does not know how to maintain real closeness because true intimacy requires presence and honesty. So instead, they create a cycle of love and rejection, keeping the other person constantly off balance. The more confused the victim becomes, the more energy they spend trying to understand the narcissist's moods instead of seeing the truth clearly. The sad part is that silence is often mistaken for mystery, even for love. The victim asks, "What did I do wrong? Why are they different now?" In trying to fix what cannot be fixed, they fall deeper into the trap. Silence becomes an invisible chain, not made of force or anger, but of longing for love. Yet, as Jung taught, darkness cannot survive once light shines on it. The moment the victim understands that silence is not love but manipulation, awareness begins. When they stop reacting, stop guessing, stop letting silence define their worth, the whole system of control begins to collapse. The downfall of a narcissist does not come through shouting or fighting. It comes quietly when the person they once controlled no longer reacts. Jung said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining light, but by making the darkness conscious." Here, the light of truth does not shine on the victim, but directly into the narcissist's hidden self. Throughout the relationship, they believed they had all the power. Every word, every look, every withdrawal was meant to guide another person's emotions. They thought that as long as the other person cried, pleaded, or tried to prove their worth, they were still the center of their world. But when the survivor begins to heal, when silence replaces all reactions, the old story collapses. What truly frightens the narcissist is not anger, it is indifference. Because anger still gives them energy, but indifference cuts them off completely. Jung called this the withdrawal of projection. When the victim stops seeing the narcissist as powerful and begins to see them as they truly are, a wounded, hollow person unable to love, the power breaks. At that moment, the narcissist often panics. They try to bring back control with guilt, fake love, or sweet promises, but it no longer works. The emotional connection that once fed them is gone. They cannot understand why their once loyal source of energy is now quiet, calm, and unreachable. This is their breaking point, the silent collapse. The moment they realize that control was never connection, that power built on fear lasts only until the other person finds their strength again. When that happens, the walls they built begin to crumble from the inside. They always believed they were unbreakable, but in the end, indifference destroys them. Silence is not weakness. It is the final act of freedom, the quiet truth that says, "You no longer have any power in my life." And that is something they never saw coming. The greatest fear that all narcissists share is the fear of being forgotten. They can endure hate, anger, or rejection, but indifference, complete silence, is their worst nightmare. In their world, to exist means to create a reaction. Jung once said, "There is nothing more terrifying than facing oneself." Indifference forces them to see the emptiness within, the emptiness they've spent their whole lives running from. In relationships, narcissists believe they are the emotional center. They want every word, every look, and every thought to revolve around them. Even your anger or sadness feeds them. It reminds them they still matter. But when the one they once controlled no longer reacts, when there is no pain, no jealousy, only peace and silence, their illusion breaks. Being forgotten is like holding up a mirror that reflects the truth. They were never as grand as they imagined. In the eyes of others, they become nothing more than a fading memory, a closed chapter. This is the wound of the ego Jung described. When the mask breaks, the shadow underneath rises, bringing panic and fear. Narcissists would rather be hated than ignored because hate still gives them connection, but indifference ends it completely. It leaves no room for argument, no chance for return. It says clearly, "You no longer exist in my story." And that truth is what they cannot bear. In the Jungian sense, being forgotten is a chance to face the real self. But instead of learning, narcissists panic. They rush to find new attention, new praise, new validation. They chase approval at any cost, sometimes through lies, sometimes through fake kindness, or by spreading false stories. Yet the harder they try to prove they still matter, the more obvious it becomes that their value depends only on others still caring. This becomes their greatest punishment. Not revenge, not humiliation, but being erased from memory. When you walk away quietly, when your silence becomes your last statement, they are forced to face their deepest fear. They have lost control, lost importance, and lost their place in your life. Love, when real, can heal and reveal. But for a narcissist, true love becomes a mirror they cannot face. Jung said, "A person does not become whole by avoiding what they fear, but by confronting it." Love reflects everything. It shows the light and the dark, the truth and the lies. And when that reflection exposes their emptiness and their deceit, they turn away. To them, love is something to own. But real love requires openness, humility, and the courage to take responsibility. That is what terrifies them the most. They cannot imagine removing the mask that hides their weakness. So instead, they turn